everybody. Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato. One final day here all together in the DraftKings studio in Boston. What a lovely week it's been.
I'm going to miss you guys.
Are you really going to miss us that much?
I miss this.
Cars for kids stuck in your head before the show
No, that
this
will
morning?
be stuck in my head now forever. No, but it was nice. It was nice to have the energy in here. And
we had late last
back
night,
soon again.
right? I mean,
I'm surprised you guys didn't sleep here. Are you sure? I don't know if I believe you. Because you were here watching
well,
the
we do
draft.
have the comfy couch.
We do have the comfy couch.
So there was a thought that if we stayed through the entire first round that we may just sleep here.
Because we did come here last night, put a bunch of social content out there for you. At GoJo and Golic on Twitter is where you can check that out. But we stayed here to make sure that we all took in the draft together because we've got a great show for you guys that, as always, you should download, subscribe, rate, and review. Leave us a 5-star rating for and check us out live Monday through Friday here, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Of course, you can check out the best of GoJo and Golic on VSiN, wherever you hear that, from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on the radio. And for a full recap of round one of the NFL draft, Claudia, we've got an awesome show. What's coming up?
Yes, and if you said that you thought it would be this offensive heavy, you're probably lying. Because cue the quarterback. 6 signal callers go in the top 12. We'll get a reaction to the action. Matt Miller from ESPN and Fox Sports. Carmen Vitali will join us. And what's in the box? The wine box.
Thank you.
Senior says we open our draft time capsule. Like I said, you guys were here late. We're going to dig into everything. Just overall reaction, though, Senior, were you super surprised at all the offense? I know you said, though, 6 quarterbacks was something you saw that could come.
We definitely saw some records, tying records, 6 quarterbacks, offensive players over 23. We'll get into all that. But I thought the thing that struck me was the chalk early on.
Yeah.
You know, of what you hear. Remember, it's always a lying season. But still, some of that stuff comes to fruition at times. But it was just chalk, 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 chalk all the way until we'll get to that number 8 pick by the Atlanta Falcons. But it was just going right along as everybody had thought.
Yeah, I think we had become so familiar with so many of the names during this draft cycle, even by the end. Like, I love the NFL draft. I'm already sitting here thinking about, all right, night 2 starts at 7 tonight. I'm supposed to go to a housewarming party, but can they put the draft on here? Because the second and third day of the draft becomes the really exciting time when the best teams are going to find a way to fill out their roster. So I'm a sicko. I love the draft. But even getting towards last night, it's like, all right, we've talked about all these prospects so much. I mean, hell, this is a year where we know offensive linemen's names. Multiple. It's exciting.
And they're hard to pronounce.
Fantastic. Majestic times. Yes, they are a little bit difficult to pronounce. These fan bases are going to have their work cut out for them. Shout out to the sports information directors. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. But last night was, even by normal draft standards, unusually chalky near the top in our evaluation and apparently the NFL's evaluation that don't always match up publicly. We talk about the lying that goes on. And so this year it seemed like the truth was a little bit unavoidable.
Yeah, but boy, offensive heavy. I mean, just incredible where we went from the quarterbacks to all the offensive positions. We knew it would be heavy from wide receiver and offensive line, and it was. But still, the quarterback position had to shock everybody.
I was going to say 6 quarterbacks at 12 picks is just insane.
I called it. I called it.
I'll fully admit, I never expected Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. to be first-round quarterbacks, let alone Claudia to insert themselves the way they did.
Let me ask you guys this. Do you think it was more because a need of the teams or just the talent and the depth of this class?
Well, I think it was more need of the teams. Yeah. This is the most overdrafted position there is, bar none. So you're going to reach a little bit at times. And we're going to find out. Remember, this ties a record, 1983, when there were 6 quarterbacks taken, the first one being John Elway, the last one, by the way, being Dan Marino. Throw in the Tony Easons and Todd Blackledges and Ken O'Briens in between there. Here, it was 1 Caleb Williams, and the 6th quarterback was number 12, to the Denver Broncos. So that was a bit of I thought there'd be 6, but I thought it might be someone coming up late in the first round to grab that 6th quarterback. There were 6 quarterbacks by 12 picks. That was a bit stunning.
I was going to say, with Dan Marino, the guy had a howitzer strapped to his shoulder. Yeah. There was no secret as to why you would go up and say, we're going to take Dan Marino at the end of the first round. The physical gifts seem obvious. Here it's a little less so, and I'm with you. It is so need-driven when we look at the teams that were involved here. Now, Minnesota, relative to what we expected, that maybe they'd have to trade up into the top 5 to go get J.J. McCarthy, ends up only having to move 1 spot to get him at 10 and secure their quarterback. But at a time where, hey, when you let Kirk Cousins walk, but you've still got the rest of this team in a place that for so many many looks like a playoff team potentially, you needed someone other than Sam Darnold to walk into the season with. For the Denver Broncos, fresh off a disaster with Russell Wilson and with Sean Payton sitting here wondering, why did I come back necessarily? This was another one where it felt like they couldn't walk into the season and justify to ownership, their fan base, or anybody else that our plan at quarterback was this incomplete. And so they've got to come out here and say, the way Sean Payton is apparently, that, hey, the line from Sean Payton that we heard through Adam Schefter was, back when Patrick Mahomes was coming out, Sean Payton was all set to take him at number 11, and then the Chiefs traded up to 10 to take him there, and that he feels as sure about Bo Nix in this year's draft as he did about Patrick Mahomes back in that draft. Do I believe that? No. But is that what you have to say right now with the position Denver's in? Absolutely.
We'll pull the reins on that one.
Yeah,
But remember, going into this draft, Sean Payton had never taken a quarterback in the first 2 rounds of a draft as a head coach. That goes by the wayside. He would have
taken Patrick Mahomes, so half credit.
Well, no, I'm not even going to give him half credit. He gets the guy he wants. He was in Denver and didn't have the guy he wanted in Russell Wilson, who's in Pittsburgh now, so he gets the guy he wants. But as we talk about these guys and where they fit in the surprise at number 8, let's also remember we had that graph. The hit rate for first-round quarterbacks on a second deal is actually 46%. It's actually under 50%. And you go back to that 83 draft. You had the hits, Elway, Kelly, Marino, Hall of Famers. You had the misses as far as living up to Todd Blackledge, Tony Eason, Ken O'Brien.
So why don't we, in that regard, then mentioning all of them, start at the top, because the top of the draft went the way that everybody had predicted and expected. Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. And, Dad, we'll get into winners and losers, but, man, it is hard not to wake up in Chicago and feel like you won the entire first round of the draft, considering you started off, you had the first pick, you knew you were going to take Caleb Williams for months, and then also landing Rome Odunze at 9 out of Washington as that young quarterback receiver combo to already go along with what you had in DJ Moore. Keenan Allen comes over, and an offensive line that had been much improved through your draft picks over the last few seasons. This feels like the start of something potentially very special in Chicago, which we know with their recent quarterback history at the top of the draft is a feeling they're going to have to try and get used to around there.
DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, they pick up DeAndre Swift. Their defense, end of the season, was one of the best defenses in the league.
Yep.
As we said yesterday, Justin Fields has to be in Pittsburgh going, what the hell?
I was just going to say that.
What's going on?
You know, was something I did wrong with
where was
people?
This? Because I still buy into Justin Fields, and we'll have to wait and see because Russell Wilson right now is the guy there. But Caleb Williams is set up for success about as good as we've seen a top pick be, because normally a top pick goes to a bad team.
Yeah.
But this is a team that's building, so kudos to Ryan Poles, the GM there, and what he's been doing.
So how much room, though, is he going to have, now that the ceiling is so high, he has all of these pieces around him, he has to show up, right? There's no excuses. Where's the room for excuses at this point?
Oh, no, and recent history is not going to help that pressure either.
Exactly
we've
right.
talked so much about that Houston Texans team that is going to be in the back of every team's mind that drafted a rookie quarterback in the first round. And we'll get to that when it comes to J.J. McCarthy, because I actually think the Vikings kind of did a Costco Houston Texans from last year in the way they approached the first round of this draft. But no, Claudia, you're right. There's a ton of pressure on Caleb Williams, but that's also a situation he's very used to. There's been pressure on Caleb Williams since he showed up on Oklahoma's campus. That certainly doubled up when he transferred to USC with Lincoln Riley, and he's always been a guy that's courted the smoke. He conducts himself in a way, he puts himself out there that knows, hey, I'm going to get a lot of flack back. We saw this last season after the Notre Dame game when they started to hit the skids. Everybody was waiting to pile up on dude. So he's used to that. That's not going to be any surprise for him. Now he just gets to get acclimated with an offense that's got another new coordinator. Now he's not carrying that baggage. It's his first NFL coordinator. But walking into this season, still in the backdrop, is Matt Eberflus was a guy whose job was on the line at the end of last year, potentially. They bring him back now. What do the Bears need to do and accomplish this season in order to keep this franchise and this coaching staff intact? Because I think that kind of continuity for Caleb early in his career is going to be the most important factor.
First off, no disrespect to Costco, the way Mike mentioned that. I love your food
I love the Costco.
Love the food
great.
samples there.
Yep.
But, I mean, what a difference. I mean, we talked about how, and I even called a few of the Bear games, that I just didn't think Luke Getsy, the then offensive coordinator, and Justin Fields were always on the same page. Now both are gone. Shane Waldron in there taking over as the offensive coordinator. But think about how the team that had the first pick and took a quarterback from last year to this year are set up. What Chicago has as opposed to what Bryce Young had in Carolina. I mean, what a monster difference. So to your point, Claudia, the Bears should be able to hit the ground somewhat running. Detroit has that division right now. It's their division, but now we have obviously Minnesota and Chicago as far as teams that are going to have new quarterbacks, seeing where they're going to fit as Green Bay, is still in love with Jordan Love.
There you go. Had to get the pun in there.
Had to do it.
2 and 3, Jaden Daniels and Drake Maye come off the board respectively to the Washington Commanders and the New England Patriots here. I know Claudia was very nervous watching Drake Maye play basketball in the lead up to his draft pick the other night here. You already want that written into his contract that despite the family history, we need him off the basketball court.
And I get it. He might not be out there, first of all, might sit behind Brissett a little bit, but we don't need you hurt. Just wait. Just read the playbook. Get ready for us, please.
Yeah, I mean, 2 very different situations, though, to Claudia's point, right? Like, Jaden Daniels probably going to be expected to come in with Cliff Kingsbury right away and be the guy. And with Drake Maye, the Patriots do have some options, having the quarterback situation they've got in that room to maybe bring him along. There's the thought, I think I heard Bill Belichick talking with McAfee that, hey, there's some stuff with Drake Maye that he could use a little bit of polish on here. And so do you try not to rush anything now that you've got a new regime and really try and give them the long runway to make this as successful as possible?
Yeah, you bring in Jacoby Brissett. He's there, so he's a guy that maybe could bridge there a bit. But it was interesting, Bill Belichick breaking down Drake Maye of some of the good throws he had, but also for a guy that big, kind of bailing a bit, throwing off his back foot, kind of bailing out of the pocket when there wasn't really a lot of pressure around him as well. I like Drake Maye, but of the quarterbacks that got drafted, he has the least experience, right? I mean, he started, I believe,
well, I mean,
the least amount of games.
Relative to a class where Bo Nix played for 8 years and had 61 starts, like, this is a different time. We've talked about it with the pandemic era guys. You are getting more veteran quarterbacks coming out here. Like, let's put it this way. This isn't Mitch Trubisky. Like, this guy's at least got multiple years as a starter
he has
at North
20-some
Carolina.
starts. Mitch had 13. But you haven't had the great run of Carolina quarterbacks and Mitch and then Sam Howell and now,
well, yeah. You didn't have a great run of Ohio State quarterbacks until you had C.J. Stroud, which is a reminder that circumstance dictates a lot. And that's why, to that point, him bailing out of there, I think those are bad habits that came because he never had anyone to block for him.
Yeah.
You watch North Carolina the last couple of years and show me the help outside of Josh Downs 2 years ago that he had there. So, but that's on New England now is you've got to coach and create an environment where that's not happening, where you don't have a Derek Carr under siege every play reinforcing some of those bad habits. So those 2 picks there. Jaden Daniels, the frame is the concern, but again, this is a guy that's continued to improve at every level, so there's no reason to believe he can't continue that.
Just know when the play's done.
Yes, biggest thing.
Because he's a guy that will go for those yards, and there's a time to do that, and there's a time to hit the deck. So that's something that he's going to need to learn because, boy, he is something to watch.
So those 3, everyone kind of expected. We'd all talked through and kind of prepared for that here. 8, Claudia's where things went off the rails here. The Atlanta Falcons woke up and chose violence against their fan base once again.
We needed a little shock, though, right? It was a bit too chalky for me. So why not? Let's go get Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington, although we just signed Kirk Cousins at 35 years old to a 4-year, $180 million contract. Let's bring in Michael Penix Jr. So he's 28 when that contract for Kirk Cousins is over. Everybody was shocked. Even more shocking, though, was the fact that James Palmer, NFL Network, said the Seahawks, Saints, and Raiders all tried to get into the top 10 for Michael Penix Jr. Falcons GM Terry Fontenot said, well, this is why we did it.
If you believe in a quarterback, you have to take him. And if he sits for 4 or 5 years, that's a great problem to have because we're doing so well at that position. So it's just as simple as if you see a guy that you believe in at that position, you have to take him.
And like I said, he's going to be pushing 28, Michael Penix Jr. at the end of that. So that doesn't make much sense to me. Something else before I bring this to you guys. Kirk Cousins' agent was asked, Mike Garafolo posted this on Twitter. Yes, it was a big surprise. He said, we had no idea this was coming. The truth is the whole time the league had no idea this was coming. We got no heads up. Kirk got a call from the Falcons when they were on the clock. That was the first we heard. It never came up in any conversation. So it was a shock to everybody on the inside as well as the out. GoJo.
There was a great video, Dad, of the draft war rooms, which had 30 people in each of them, were masses of humanity inside these buildings, of Terry Fontenot, it looked like, explaining to Arthur Blank what was going on with this pick in there in a way that I don't know if Arthur Blank looked excited about it or not.
We did what?
Yeah, hear me out. 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Super flex league. No, but I think to Claudia's point, this goes back to what Diana Rossini came on with us and talked about the other day. She said Michael Penix Jr. was told to her, the quarterback, not enough people were talking about on the outside, but on the inside where, hey, if you're one of the teams that cleared him medically, which was the big flag on him, this was an incredibly productive player at the college level for the last couple years at the helm of what you could argue was the best offense in the sport. That being said, Dad, the confusing part of the situation, because I think both you and I love Michael Penix Jr., the player, love the young man, but look at this situation in Atlanta and go, all right, you guaranteed Kirk Cousins $100 million over the next 2 years. You just said, best case scenario, hey, this quarterback gets to sit for 4 or 5 years. I get the Green Bay model is enticing, but you have got one older injured quarterback right now that you just paid a bunch of money to, and to Claudia's point, an older injured quarterback that you just drafted to potentially sit behind him until he's in his late 20s and then go and be the guy that takes over here. It's a head scratcher for a team that most people had penciled to win the NFC South this year once they acquire Kirk Cousins to not get more immediate help.
You know me, I love the quarterback. I've said this for a while. I think he could be the best quarterback in this class, but it is a head scratcher. They were just 2 wins less than the team that won the division in Tampa Bay. Then they get Kirk Cousins. So you thought they'd go on the defensive side to get some help. So I was a little surprised here. Now, Terry Fontenot, the GM, is living the Green Bay model here, right? Which worked once with Aaron sitting behind Brett Favre and looks like it's on the road to possibly working again as Jordan Love really improved through the year last year as he sat behind Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see. And, I mean, it's got to be at least 2 years for Kirk Cousins, right, from the money standpoint. He's a cap hit at 25 this year, 40 next year, and then 57, which not going to happen.
Yeah.
His dead cap is, obviously it's not happening this year, 90, but next year it's 65. The year after that, it's 25, a little more manageable.
Yeah,
so
it's essentially a 2-year deal. It's like the deal Daniel Jones side, but on steroids.
But we've seen quarterbacks play older, right? Kirk Cousins is 35. If they're doing well in the next 2 years, you're not sitting. You may have to actually redo his deal to keep the cap hit down.
I'm going to say, Terry said it. He's like, if he sits for 4 years, that's a good thing for us. And that doesn't make sense given the capital you use, because to the point about the Packers picks, Dad, those were picks in the 20s. Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, you got those guys at the end of the first round without nearly as much risk in that area. So I think that's the baffling. And you also had a future Hall of Famer in place in both times. You had Brett Favre quarterbacking for you then. You had Aaron Rodgers quarterbacking for you then. Kirk Cousins has been a very good quarterback, but this is a much more tenuous point in his career given the injury last year.
At 8, the player you could have got to help you now. Again, I'm conflicted because I really like the quarterback, but I don't like this for the team now because, man, it is a year by year. There are a lot of veterans in locker rooms that don't get many shots. And right now they're going, okay, that's great 4 years from now, but I sure as hell may not be here in 4 years. What's going to help us now? That's what players think.
Well, I mean, and for a team that could have had its pick of the defensive players in this draft, was the bottom half of the league in sack production last season, could have used that for Raheem Morris. Now, reportedly, Raheem Morris loved Michael Penix Jr., went through the process here and was smitten with him. And again, in a vacuum, I agree with Terry Fontenot's statement that, hey, if you love the quarterback, you take him, you go get him no matter what. But in conjunction with all the other moves they made this offseason, and again, the fact that he is 24, the fact that I get in the last couple of years, he's beaten the injury charges. He has been a clean injury sheet through the last couple of seasons at Washington. But knowing there's a bunch of surgically repaired stuff in there from years ago, it still gives you a lot of pause in this situation and becomes the real head scratcher of the first round. I mean, for Atlanta, you're going to see a lot of people give them the failing grade coming off round 1 because this move in context of their whole offseason just doesn't make a lot of sense.
We've been doing this show for 20 minutes, and we've only talked of 4 of the 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the Michael Penix Jr. pick was that surprising.
Yes,
and so while we're all still trying to digest that, Atlanta Falcons fans are used to being hurt. Again, this could all work out well. You could pull off the Green Bay. Even Green Bay's not always sure they can pull off the Green Bay. Coming up next, though, we will get to J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and the rest of the first round here on GoJo and Golic. All right. Round one continues to roll along here, or did roll along. We roll along with round one, would probably be the right words to say that, but I'm sleepy, and so we're working on it here. 6 quarterbacks in the top 12 picks. We got through 4 of them in the last segment, Dad, which leaves us with J.J. McCarthy, who the Minnesota Vikings end up only having to trade 1 spot to get to, from 11 to 10, in order to take there with their first pick in the first round. And then Bo Nix, the one that I think, as surprising as Michael Penix Jr. was, and after that we were kind of ready for anything here, still seeing Bo Nix go at 12 to the Denver Broncos ends up becoming another stunner in the first round as we get to 6 quarterbacks in 12 picks. So of those 3, Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix. The most surprising probably Penix, or did Bo Nix even jump over?
No, I think Penix, because they just signed Kirk Cousins. I think that was the big thing. We knew Denver needed a quarterback. We knew Minnesota needed a quarterback. We didn't think Atlanta needed a quarterback right now, and they could really help themselves probably on the defensive side of the ball. Because they're right in that division, as we talked about. So that's still the most surprising to me, even though I'm a big Penix fan. J.J. McCarthy went right where everybody thought he would, but Minnesota got to basically stay where they were. They just went Minnesota made 2 trades. We'll get into the other trade that they made. I like the second one they made, though they did give up a good amount for that, I thought. But they moved the 1 spot up with the Jets. They swapped there, and they get J.J. McCarthy, who, again, you look at quarterbacks and how quickly they're going to assimilate to the NFL. But what helps is, what do you have around them? All right?
Sure.
So for Minnesota, you get Aaron Jones over there. Madison didn't work out after they got rid of Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, so he's gone. I believe he's with the Raiders now. So you have him in the backfield. You have Justin Jefferson. You have a monster receiver.
Which you could just start it there and go, hey, you're a rookie quarterback. And Justin Jefferson is your number 1 wide receiver. Life is pretty good.
By the way, T.J. Hawkinson, who had come over a couple years ago from the trade in Detroit. So you're in good shape there. So you're set up pretty well as a quarterback to not have to carry. That's the one thing you don't want to happen with a young quarterback, is for them to carry the entire load, right? And so,
if there's one thing J.J. McCarthy's used to not doing,
it's
not carrying the entire load there, as he was part of that 15-0 Michigan team that had tons of great weapons all over
You don't want him to do that, and he won't have to. Kevin O'Connell, the former quarterback there, calling the plays and running the offense. So we all thought that pick was coming, though you and I think others have been a little bit like, wow, J.J. McCarthy, a first-round quarterback, and then the thought of maybe at 5 with a trade. But then Bo Nix. Now, listen, Sean Payton, he's a hell of a coach, a hell of a quarterback coach. We saw what him and Drew Brees, what they did together.
Sure.
Bo Nix in that same area of size.
Sure.
But he got his guy, right? This is the guy he wanted, not so much the guy he had to have in Russell Wilson in Denver. But, man, this is most people's estimation, a second-round quarterback, that because they were in such desperation mode, because they had failed so famously with Russ, they had to reach and go up and get. We had Bo Nix on the other day. Incredibly likable kid, incredibly mature football player, 61 college starts across 2 different schools, multiple coordinators, and he's made it work. The aptitude, all these things that for a lot of these guys, for J.J. McCarthy, for Jaden Daniels, for him, a lot of guys have talked about the neck-up stuff more than ever this year. The intangible traits that make a lot of these quarterbacks go and are so difficult for most NFL teams to try and figure out with these players. But still looking at the physical skill set for Bo Nix that doesn't involve the strongest arm in the world, the game that generally tended to be better off schedule than on, and when it was on, it was still a lot of RPO-based stuff around the line of scrimmage, which I grant you. NFL teams doing more than ever now to try and meet their young quarterbacks halfway. It's still, this one is definitely a big-time reach. There's no other way to explain it, but Denver did not have a lot of options, and so they had to go and make this choice. And why didn't they have options? Because people could have said, well, you could have traded back and got him. Well, the pick right after them was the Raiders. Right. And the Raiders had to be sitting there going, what the hell? 6 go before us?
Oh, yeah.
Because, Aiden O'Connell's going to get the shot. They pick up Gardner Minshew, but they were talking about the possibility of a Michael Penix who ends up going 8. So you couldn't really, if you wanted to drop Denver, because maybe the Raiders would have taken Bo Nix, or I don't know, but it just seems a little high. But we talked about this with quarterbacks. You take a chance. If you're going to trade back on a quarterback and not get him, as we said, the most overvalued position in the draft. That a lot of times they're going to go higher than they should.
And it's less dire than ever, the misses in the first round. It's less damning to the future of your organization than it's been prior. So I don't know. That one, I mean, even J.J. McCarthy for me, like, I understand we went through the whole draft cycle. We thought they were going to have to go up to 4. They only have to go to 10. It feels like savings, but this is still overdrafting relative to where I thought this quarterback was going to go originally. And so, you know, I understand Minnesota, again, kind of similar situation, felt like they had to do something after letting Kirk Cousins walk. And relative to Atlanta, relative to Denver, this feels like something we've all been talked into more.
Right. Yep.
The pre-draft propaganda worked because
Agreed.
this feels like it makes a lot more sense to most people, even if I still look at this and go, yeah, I don't really know if I believe this quarterback can be the next franchise guy for them in that way. You combine it, I said they kind of did the Costco Houston Texans, Dad, with their second first-round pick. They trade up from 23 to 17, and they take Dallas Turner, who
a good move.
was in contention for the top edge. But, Dad, you look at what they gave up to go and get that pick. They trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They get the 17th pick, and in exchange, the Jags got the 23rd pick that they turned into Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, a 24 fifth-round pick, a 25 third-round pick, and a 25 fourth-round pick. So that's a lot of mid-round picks all together to move up and get this guy. Much the same way the Houston Texans mortgaged a lot of their draft future to go back into the top 5 and take Will Anderson Jr., but
I like the move.
Will Anderson Jr. won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Like,
I like
that's
the move.
the bar when you give up this much capital for these guys.
I like the move. I think it was a good move. You're going to get a productive player right away.
I mean, let's put it this way. He's not Will Anderson Jr., though.
No,
like, when it comes to what you can expect immediately, this is much more of a projection for this player who has insane physical ability, like more than Will Anderson Jr., but is not as game-ready day one a player as Will was coming in. Where Will Anderson Jr. was captain for the Texans to start this season. Like, that guy came in and immediately gave you that juice. It remains to be seen if Dallas is going to be able to give you that much. Oh, by the way, Dad, on the quarterback front, by the way, we had this news from the draft yesterday as well, Claudia, as we looked at the Minnesota Vikings, the New England Patriots, all apparently reaching out to the Chargers to see, hey, seen you kind of doing some things differently around there in that organization. Jim Harbaugh, strange cat, new organization. You guys interested in dealing this Justin Herbert fella? To which, thank God, they were told flatly no, Dad, in this conversation, because anything else would have been patently absurd.
Would have been a monster dead cap hit. $63 million.
Yeah, financially it would have been stupid, but also Justin Herbert's really good at football at the quarterback position.
That was never going to happen.
I tend to think that you should want to keep those guys around, especially while you're trying to nurse a wide receiver room back to health after letting everybody who's been productive for you leave.
You know what? You never know if you're going to get a yes unless you ask.
Oh, I get it. I'm just glad that the answer was flat out no in this situation. You can't play if you don't win, and for the Patriots and for the Vikings, I get both of those teams, given their situations, trying to call and ask. That being said, Dad, Justin Herbert gets a little bit of protection here as well, so Joe Alt, our buddy, is going to take care of him in Los Angeles, and round we go. Jim Harbaugh, smart man, said we view offensive linemen as weapons here.
Yeah, that might have been a little much, but that's not a shock.
A little much.
That's
correct.
I think they're great protectors.
Weapon.
However you want to define weapon, I guess. That's Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah,
you know what?
An object for blunt force trauma is a weapon.
It's not shocking.
If you beat someone down with a hammer, it's still a weapon, isn't it?
Okay, all right. Are we done?
No.
Okay.
We're done when I say we're done.
Okay.
Jim Harbaugh, stop making me fall in love with you. I'm sick of this. You're at Michigan for the last decade. You're one of my bitter rivals. I'm not supposed to do this. And now all of a sudden, you're waxing poetic in the pre-draft process and on draft night about beef in a way that makes me fall in love with you. How dare you?
A lot of beef went.
Ridiculous.
Surprisingly enough, as we'll continue with the first round, the O-line hit the under in the first round, which was somewhat surprising to me.
The O-line hits the under. Big news out of the wide receivers both taken in the first round, certainly the top players there, but also what happened with some other wide receivers around the NFL in the lead up to the draft here. Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles refused to stop making deals this offseason, refused to stop making news on draft weekend with one particular wide receiver in there. It's amazing. And again, we talked about it. This is a first round that largely felt chalky all the way down. There wasn't a lot of exciting moves. But I think as we hand out grades for winners and losers going forward in the NFL draft, we're going to see a lot of teams got better, specifically up front and out wide. So we'll keep it rolling along. Still plenty more to get to from the NFL draft. And, oh, by the way, the NBA played playoff basketball games last night. I don't know if you guys heard.
going down 0-3 to the Knicks with a dub last night, 125-114. Embiid dropped 50 points, which was crazy, but that wasn't really the headline, flagrant foul, but also the fact that we learned he's not just dealing with a knee, but also he was diagnosed with Bell's palsy, which he went on to say has sort of been affecting his vision. Here's what he had to say.
It's pretty annoying, with, my left side of my face, my mouth, and, and my eye. It's been tough, but, I'm not a quitter, so you got to keep fighting through anything. It's unfortunate. That's the way I look at it.
And he came back to say, again, it's annoying. My dad actually has this. He's had it for a while. So it is more annoying than anything. You have to put eye drops in your eye to make sure it does, it's not dry.
It's basically like a paralysis of one side of the face.
So that side of the face sort of. But my dad doesn't play basketball, so that's the question, right?
Sure.
If it's affecting his vision, that's an issue. But also if he's dropping 50, I don't know if it's going to be too much of an issue.
Exactly. He does say he uses eye drops a lot. It is something that can go away in a few months, start to, or it may stay. Like you say, your father had it may stay. So we'll wait and see. But putting 50 up and Philly getting that win, making it a 2-1 series. That series hasn't started yet because the home team has won every game so far. But that series to me is the most fun one to watch of this first round because it is without question the most physical.
Yeah, the most physical. Both of these teams clearly some animosity because I think, Philly, New York, both passionate fan bases, franchises that found themselves and believed themselves to be very tough. There was always going to be headbutting here. And, Dad, certainly not surprised Philadelphia won this one, right? They've been in both of the first two games. Looked like in the second game they could have been in position to steal. And so Joel Embiid, who had already played really well, I mean, we've been wowed by this guy's toughness. Going back to the first couple of games, comes down off the knee injury, off a lob to himself, and we thought was going to end everything. And instead, he's basically still been a walking double-double, 30+ points, and now 50 in this game, showing out in front of the home crowd. This always seemed like a series that was primed to go much longer because these teams had played tightly contested games all throughout. But, Dad, to your point, got extra chippy last night. It had already been banging on the inside, but then we had the moment and the dust up here. Joel Embiid assessed a flagrant one as he got knocked down on the ground, and while he was on the ground,
under the basket,
Knicks center Mitchell Robinson, who was had been dealing with an ankle injury coming into all of this, and so was worried about that, is up above Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid ends up laying on the ground and sort of pulling him down to him here. This was the explanation Joel Embiid gave and the response from Knicks head coach Tom Thibodeau.
The other plays, obviously Mitchell Robinson jumping and, trying to land, make sure he doesn't land on me because obviously we know the history that I have when, Kaminga landing on my knee. So I kind of had some flashbacks, when he came down to it. It's unfortunate. I mean, I didn't mean to hurt anybody. I just, in those situations, I gotta protect myself.
Flagrant one on Joel Embiid.
Which one? The one they called or the one they didn't call? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. I just want to make sure we have clarity on that.
Did you see that as the proper? Was it flagrant one, or did you feel like?
I don't even know. Like I guess they had. What did they have? 33 free throws. Yeah.
So that sounds like a man who's trying not to get fined at the podium, despite being very angry in this game. But, Dad, Joel Embiid basically saying this was self-preservation. He was trying not to get stepped on at the bottom of this. Mitchell Robinson, thankfully, not seriously hurt after this experience. But the Knicks calling this a dirty play. Do you think it is?
Listen, I think as I watched it, I saw a guy who got his knee hurt by getting landed on. He's under the basket and a big man is coming down, and I don't think he wanted to get stepped on. Do I think he was targeting Robinson's ankle in that blink of an eye? No, I do not. Was it a little more extracurricular? Probably, but he's right under the basket and the big man's coming down. So I'm kind of going to do whatever I got to do to not get stepped on or landed on.
There's a pretty solid, him pulling him down in that way.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's a little extracurricular for sure.
I was going to say, to me, it's probably a little dirty.
Yeah.
It's dirty, guys. It's dirty.
It looks like a dirty play as someone who, at times would flirt with that line, and I know you were the same way,
yes.
Dad. you recognize it, and here it's just readily apparent because there's no pile or anything else that you can see here. I get not wanting to get stepped on, but usually the move would be to try and slide yourself out
or move it away real
do
quick.
something
Not
like
reach
that.
and grab
trying to pull the guy
Yeah.
down
That's
with
almost
you.
worse because you're going to pull him down
On
and you
top
could lay
of
it
you,
on
yeah.
your knee. It was dirty, and he was frustrated. He's been sort of frustrated throughout this whole series, so I think that just came out. Right? And he's like, if I'm dropping 50 points and if we don't win this game, I'm pissed at the refs. So it was dirty in my eyes. When I watched that, I said, what was that?
Also, I see Thibodeau being upset because I believe Embiid took more free throws than the Knicks as a team. I think it took 21 free throws. So that's got to be a little frustrating to a coach as well.
Yeah, like, listen, is this the most egregious thing I've ever seen? No, not really. Like, you've got to do a lot worse than this for me to totally lose my mind about it. But it definitely flirted with the line and probably stepped over it. And I'll be curious, assess the flagrant one here. We'll see if the league says
does any
anything
more to
differently.
that.
I don't think, let's put it this way, they're not going to take him
He's
off
not
the
getting
court for
suspended.
this.
He may get
It's
fined
not
some.
Draymond.
Yes.
It's not Draymond.
It's not Draymond kicking someone in a couillon.
If we've got the Draymond line of demarcation here, we are firmly on the side that keeps you on the court, but may lighten your wallet a little bit there. So that was that game. The series going how we expected here. Another series kind of going how we expected, Dad. Denver Nuggets take a 3-0 lead. They come back from down double digits again. At home this time for the Los Angeles Lakers at Crypto. And this seems like it is every bit as sweepy as we predicted to start the season. Aaron Gordon this time, the party that goes off and has the kind of game that I said. He can be the difference maker on a team. He's one of the most unique players in the NBA at power forward, and he showed you why last night.
These guys had 4 players, they're starting 5 in the 20s. I mean, scoring. I mean, it was really incredible what they're just obviously they're a better team than the Lakers. Because they're going to play better teams than the Lakers, they better knock off the being down the way they are and always having to come back. That game too, remember they were down 20 and came back. It's been down 12, down 20, down 12, and they've come back. They can't. It's tough to live on that one, but their third quarters have been incredible. How they've come out and dominated.
And what they've done to D'Angelo Russell the last 2 years in the series there. D'Angelo Russell, who had a real renaissance in the back half of the season, but much like happened last year against Denver, became unplayable by the end there. No points last night in this matchup, Claudia, as the Lakers are now on life support to the point where LeBron James is out here doing the usual it's bigger than basketball routine.
Which I'm not surprised. I will say, if you have any faith, which I don't think you should, but the Lakers plus 3,000 right now to win this series. The interesting part of that, though, is they have been getting the lead. So if you guys watch or you watch the highlights, what is it? Why are they falling apart like this? Are the Nuggets just that good? Are they just too deep?
You only have 2 guys. You have 2 guys and 2 older guys. That's it. Now, Austin Reeves scores in the 20s. Russell doesn't do a thing, but you don't have enough. You don't have enough players that can pick up the slack for your 2 great players in LeBron and in AD. So I always am interested in this part of it, though, with LeBron, or really any pro athlete.
You hate this.
Well, I mean, I really do. Listen, for fans, they go and they get to pay their money and watch a game. It doesn't affect their lives. For professional athletes, of which, I was happily one for a number of years, this now was my job. This is how I earned my money. This was my living. So when LeBron ends basically the presser with this, it gets me a bit.
And it's just basketball. At the end of the day, it's just basketball.
I mean, it's your job. It's your livelihood. I mean, it's very convenient to say at that point.
But I'm like, I don't understand how you can get mad at this point because this is what LeBron does every time he's on the verge of getting knocked out of the playoffs. This is like the January meltdown before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
This is part of the LeBron James season cycle where he reminds you he's a father, he's a husband, he started his school, it's bigger than basketball.
I get it. And it's not just LeBron, because others have said it as well.
No, but he's great at this.
He is. It's very convenient at this point, and that's just a bit much for me. Let's just say we're getting our ass kicked. So, but hey, it's just a game.
It's the smile in the hands for me.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't care.
Christ, Falker, it's just
We're going to get swept again. We don't care.
Yeah. Like, you guys are all crazy for losing your minds over the fact that we're about to get swept by the Nuggets and lose like 12 straight games to them.
Yeah.
Don't mind the man behind the curtain. Instead, train your eyes on our sweet friend Emerson Latzia next.
Golic. We had a lot of draft questions answered last night in round one. Still, some remain. And maybe there's some questions that we're just not asking. But don't worry, because Emerson Latia is going to ask those questions in what he is calling an award-winning series. Here's Emerson on sports.
We're here to talk about the draft. Not the one where people fled to Canada to avoid it, but the NFL draft, where people willingly go to Canada to play in the CFL if they're not picked. What do you think of the draft?
Oh, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about the draft. Very exciting time for a lot of young men who are getting ready to change their life.
No, are you cold?
Oh, you mean like the win? I didn't understand your question.
Browns have had a lot of high first-round
Yes.
picks over the
Yes,
years,
they have.
right? And they seem to lose out on all of them. Why don't they just pick the good players?
Well, that would seem to be the correct thing, but what we have is 32 teams with 32 ownership groups. All these people jumbled together are supposed to dissect college athletes and their abilities at the next level. The Browns are just very bad at it.
So if they're bad at it, and the Browns typically lose the draft, who's won the most drafts? Who has the most points ever?
Well, you don't keep score in a draft.
The draft lasts 3 days, which feels a bit excessive, but apparently it's big business, with 54 million viewers last year, despite there being no winners, no points scored, and only losers. If you're picked by a team, do you have to go there, or can you refuse?
You can refuse. It is a very, very, very small group that could do that.
So that has happened before.
It's happened. The last time was Eli Manning. Before that, John Elway.
Seems kind of like a jerk thing to do. So cowards like John Elway and Eli Manning dodge their draft status, much like John Wayne. You can look it up. But somehow the greatest player of all time was almost overlooked. This is Tom Brady, 7-time Super Bowl champion, widely considered a GOAT in his sport. But as you can see in this photo, he is clearly a man. Why wasn't he picked first overall?
So he became the GOAT, but you're drafted off what you did in college based on his athletic profile, which we all see that combine video of him running very slow every year. Combine that with stats and what he did in college, and at that point, he just didn't look like a guy that you would have taken in the first round of the draft.
It seems a bit fishy if you ask me. The NFL holds an annual combine. Guys in shorts and t-shirts, they run straight, they run in dirt, they run around cones, no pads or helmets. My question is, at what point during a football game are these events normally held? I never see them.
So, great question. They're usually not held during a football game. None of those things you mentioned.
Then why do they do it?
Well, you can't play a football game. It's the off season. These guys don't want to get hurt. And so you got to do things that sort of mimic what happens in a football game in other forms that they can't necessarily replicate there for safety reasons.
Maybe that's why there's so many bad picks. So to me, the draft still feels like a huge waste of time. But maybe you'll enjoy it when these guys finally start playing in September.
Our thanks to our intrepid reporter, Emerson Latia, doing the Lord's work there to try and nail down the real stories of draft week.
Asking the questions that nobody asks.
That's what he's here for.
Yeah.
And a lot of really interesting Shrek memes. So
Oh,
outside of that, Dad, Emerson, a clear winner of draft night one in the NFL with that kind of reporting here. We know coming off, it's our job to also hand out winners and losers of draft weekend. We've talked a lot about the quarterbacks, so obviously you can include those. But, Dad, night one, give me a winner first for you from draft night
listen,
one.
Chicago is an easy choice,
Yeah.
right? Getting Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. You look at Minnesota, we all got sucked into Minnesota's going to have to trade up to get their guy, J.J. McCarthy, and they only had to move one spot. So it almost feels like a win. I don't know if I'm sold on J.J. McCarthy, but to them, they are, and they only had to move up that one spot. But then even though you talked about the amount they gave up for going 23-17,
Yeah.
trading with Jacksonville.
Healthy
I
haul.
liked that move of getting Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama. So I like. Not sure about the quarterback, but I know that's who they wanted. So, again, that's all that matters, who they wanted. But I like the move to get the defensive player.
Yeah, and you know what? Listen, like at 23, we talked about it. Being able to keep that other first-round pick, not having to move up.
Right.
Edge was another big-time need for this defense as well for Brian Flores. And all the edge rushers off the board by 19. Jared Verse goes 19 to the Los Angeles Rams. You had already had Latu off the board to the Indianapolis Colts at 15. And so it was starting to get hot there. You can understand that move, certainly. I'll stay defense, too. We talked a lot about this guy in the lead-up to it, but Mike McDonald getting to sit at 16 and get Byron Murphy falling to him, his Justin Madubuike in this newly imagined Seahawks defense that we'd imagine is going to look a lot like what we had in Baltimore in terms of structure and scheme, and now to have a defensive tackle like that can be a dynamic rusher for you, that can still eat up space on the inside as they now try and reset the foundation of that group in Seattle, feels like a home run for them. They didn't draft Jalen Carter in the first round last year, and there seemed to be a lot of consternation about that among Seahawks fans. They go out here and make it right immediately with their first-round pick.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that guy play and what he's going to do. As far as the other side, if you have winners, you always have losers. I'm conflicted with Atlanta because, as I said, I think Penix could be the best one in this class, but man, I just don't know about that fit for a team that could win right now. They didn't get anybody that will help them right now in that 8th slot when there certainly were plenty of players available for that. But one of the losers, I think, is a team that ended up not even picking in the first round and had a first-round pick. The Buffalo Bills didn't trade once, but traded twice and got out of the first round. And one of their trades was with the Chiefs, who ended up drafting the fastest guy ever running a 40-yard dash in Xavier Worthy from Texas. So you look at Buffalo in the offseason, by players leaving on their own or them getting rid of players, it was kind of a mass exodus there for Buffalo. You have obviously Josh Allen, but it's going to be starting to build new around him, and you got nobody in that first round to kind of start that. Now, they had some pickups in the offseason, I get, but they had way more people leave from that team that couldn't win, that can't get by Kansas City. And then it just seemed ironic they made a trade with Kansas City. Kansas City moves up and gets a wide receiver.
It's really the optics of this that are as bad because it's still to be determined. In a draft class we talked about deep at wide receiver, there's still talented players on the board in the second round that they could get and absolutely start to rebuild that wide receiver room. But the fact that you do it with the team that's beaten you in the postseason constantly, and I get Xavier Worthy is 165 pounds soaking wet.
He is.
But you gave Kansas City another one of the fast guys in an offense that desperately needed receiver. You could say, I'm sure Bills fans, you could try and sell it as chestnut checkers, but at this point, Kansas City's been beating you in everything, and you just handed them the keys to another meme to get you later on.
You got a rookie speedy receiver in Worthy. You got a guy who really stepped up in Rashee Rice, who'll be a second-year player. You got Isaiah Pacheco in the backfield, who's going into his third year. Travis Kelce, who's older but a Hall of Famer who still can work that middle of the field, and a guy named Pat Mahomes. So they're sitting pretty good right now.
Yeah, things are working out pretty well for them. Loser, I'd probably say Denver just because you had to go up and reach for the 6th quarterback in the class to try and make this work because you'd put yourself in such a bad position during the course of this offseason. I know Sean Payton is super high. I saw him on McAfee show saying all the right things about Bo Nix and about how accomplished he is from the neck up and how he was the most, technically is the most accurate quarterback single season in the history of college football after this last season. But man, for the position they're in that division too, where now Jim Harbaugh's back in town and we expect the Chargers to get better sooner than later. The Raiders became competitive last season, although they're an interesting team with what happened with quarterback with them now. And of course, Patrick Mahomes, the final boss living inside that house. The difficult task still looks pretty difficult for the Denver Broncos in trying to get this thing back and get it started. We are still just getting started here. More winners and losers and looking at the first round of the draft as we welcome in our friends Carmen Vitali, Matt Miller in hour number 2 to look not only back at what happened, but forward at rounds 2 and beyond in the 2024 NFL Draft here on GoJo Golic.
man.
How's everybody doing, man? You guys fired up?
Hey, fired up, Coach. We're ready to go.
We're going to go do this damn thing together. Can't wait to get you here.
Let's go do it, Coach. Thank you so much for believing in me. I promise I won't let you down.
Those are the sights and sounds of Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell welcoming in new quarterback J.J. McCarthy from Michigan at the 10th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. Excited to go and do this thing together.
At least JJ doesn't have to give the speech to recruits at Michigan to Minnesota guys by saying, hey, if you're coming here to party, don't. I mean, now he's going with a bunch of professionals. So it's
well, I mean,
a different
and if you
ballgame.
try and tell a bunch of professionals, hey, don't party or go chase girls, they'll promptly tell you to shut the hell up,
they
rookie,
will.
and go carry somebody's pads now. But if they're going to do it together, then so are we as we get through hour number 2 here at GoJo and Golic. Delighted to bring in our buddy, Fox Sports NFC North reporter Carmen Vitali, kind enough to join us now, coming off a night where, Carmen, you guys, the busiest division in football, I think, especially at the top of this draft. So I'll give you dealer's choice. In the division you cover, the biggest headline coming off night 1 of the draft is what?
Bears did another good? Probably. Or it's the 2 trade ups from Minnesota, because it was not 1 but 2. That was also I was busy last night, guys. I was very busy.
It's a lot going on in that division. But Carmen, you start off with the Bears doing other good. This whole Bears offseason seems to have been a continuation off last year. How big a home run is this for Ryan Poles and company here to not only secure what looks like their quarterback of the future, but wide receiver 1 as well?
It seems like this is Caleb Williams' built-in bestie now, is now Rome Odunze. The way that he snuck up on him as soon as Rome was doing his whatever post-draft thing in the green room, you see like Caleb creeping and he pulls out the curtain. Apparently these guys have already had a throwing session with Keenan Allen and TJ Moore, because there's no rules and there was no mystery at the end of the day as to who the Bears were taking with number 1. I'm proud of them for going out and getting another offensive weapon that, like you said, is going to be one of the receivers of the future. And now I like this iteration of the Chicago Bears with all of this offensive firepower. I don't know her. I've never seen this before. Growing up in Chicago, I'm proud. I'm so proud of them.
As we were saying earlier, Justin Fields has to be in Pittsburgh going, what the hell's going on? I mean, I come there where the cupboards are bare, and all of a sudden Caleb Williams has everybody in the world. What's that?
Cupboards are bare.
Cupboards. Oh, very, very well done.
I'm so sorry.
So that went
Why is Mike the one? Why is Junior the one making the dad jokes, Senior?
I know.
Yeah. Slowly becoming dad.
It's amazing. All my kids mock me for these, yet they all start to sound like me. Yeah.
My hand was twitching over here.
Sincerest form of flattery.
There you go. So, I mean, it really went as scripted for Chicago. Caleb won, and Rome was there at 9 for him. For Minnesota, they don't have to go up to 5 to get JJ. They go 1 spot, but then they trade 23 to 17. They give up a few picks to get Dallas Turner. Is there a thought that they gave up too much for this?
When you think about it, like the haul they gave up, and then you think about the players that they got. I mean, between J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, these are 2 top 10 players. Also, you thought you were going to have to give up next year's 1 to go up and get your quarterback. And I'm not so sure that they wouldn't have done that had the Patriots been a little more amenable to fixing their franchise instead of just taking the shiny new toy. But that's the conversation for another time. When you get 2 blue chip starters like this that are going to, be cornerstones on your team for years and years to come, I'm totally okay with what they gave up. You didn't give up a ton more this year, but you're obviously not going to be very at all active today on Friday. But Dallas Turner opposite Jonathan Grenard in a Brian Flores defense, this is more than Brian Flores has ever had on the edge in his time as a coordinator or a head coach. His scheme is creative out of necessity, and now he's pairing it with some real talent that's going to force some offensive lines to make a lot of tough decisions.
Yeah, legitimate pass rush juice for Brian Flores. Certainly great on that side. Carmen, for J.J. McCarthy on the other side, this has been a pick that a lot of people have been forecasting for a while in the lead up to the draft right now. Some folks like myself have questions about J.J. McCarthy's transition to the next level. From what you've heard and the people you've talked to, why was Minnesota so smitten with this quarterback, and why do they believe so much that he can be the guy for Kevin O'Connell?
honestly, I think it's the biggest testament to Kevin O'Connell that this is who they drafted, because he is a developmental guy. You have Sam Darnold, you're paying him $10 million to come in, and you want him to play some meaningful games and snaps for you. The talent on this roster has insulated against you having to start JJ McCarthy right away. And if JJ McCarthy is going to be an NFL quarterback, he could not have asked for a better situation than Minnesota between Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, a good offensive line, and then again, this defense that could be a top 5 unit this season. You don't have to rush him along. Not to mention, Kevin O'Connell is a former quarterback. Josh McCown is a former quarterback who is their quarterback's coach. This is telling Kevin O'Connell, hey, we believe in you. We trust you. We've seen you. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. Very underrated. Go out and make this guy who you think he can be. And we're going to trust you to do that and lead us into the future with a guy that we didn't end up having to give up that much to get.
So while Caleb Williams is going to take snap 1 as the starter, is the thought process that JJ will be the starter day 1, or maybe Sam will bridge it for a bit?
I am fully under the impression that Sam Darnold is going to start this season for the Minnesota Vikings, unless, JJ McCarthy gets into training camp and he just blows everybody out of the water. But given his lack of experience literally throwing the football at Michigan, I don't think that you're going to want to rush that development along again, and you're set up not to. So Sam Darnold, you can call me right now. He's going to be the week 1 starter for the Minnesota Vikings. He probably is going to be the week 2, week 3, week 4 starter. But again, this team can insulate against, normal quarterback play. You don't need your quarterback to be a world beater when you have that much talent on the offensive side of the ball, especially. Plus, a signal caller in Kevin O'Connell that we saw play live action Madden last year with a roster of backups just in their headset telling them, dude, look at this, do this. This is your read. Go here. Blah, blah, blah. It was incredible to watch, and they can stay afloat for a while.
He's got some of that Sean McVay puppet master feel to him, certainly there, getting in the ear of his quarterbacks as this season went along. Carmen, as we look at the top half of this division, because we talked about the teams that were in the cellar last year, the Detroit Lions, your reigning division champions here, and the Green Bay Packers made up a ton of ground. Of these two teams here, was there a pick that you thought was a better fit right now, a player that will be able to help them more immediately between the Green Bay Packers, who took Jordan Morgan, the offensive tackle out of Arizona, and the Detroit Lions, who traded up with the Cowboys to get Terrion Arnold, the defensive back out of Alabama?
Yeah, listen, the Packers are testing my patience here. I went to Arizona State as an undergrad. It's going to be hard for me to accept an Arizona Wildcat. But what the Green Bay Packers are going to do is find the best 5 in front of Jordan Love. And come hell or high water, they're going to have it. They have all these versatile linemen, which is insane. So I can't say that's the best fit because I don't know where Jordan Morgan fits, because I don't know where any of those guys are fitting right now. We're going to see. I really, really love the Lions being aggressive and going up and getting Terrion Arnold, because corner was their by far and away their biggest need. And you've seen Brad Holmes kind of take best player available up until this point. And I was really wondering if his draft strategy was going to change a little bit now that there's not a whole lot of holes on this roster. And they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl this past season. The one glaring mark on the Lions, both last year and the year before, has been their defensive secondary. They cannot keep guys healthy. They cannot keep guys on the field. I really commend the Detroit Lions for Cam Sutton gets arrested for domestic violence. He's released. They don't wait for the process to play out. They say, we don't want that in our locker room, and they get rid of him. They go and trade for Carlton Davis, but now they went out and got another guy that's going to help in that rotation. Not to mention, I think Terrion Arnold has some position flexibility. He can kind of kick inside at that nickel spot. You're going to have a versatile defensive back from Bama. Stop me if this sounds really familiar. I just think it fits so incredibly well in Detroit. I'm glad that Brad Holmes went up and got their guy. I know that I talked to a couple of coaches over there last night. They're very excited to see what he can do. He was the top of their list when it comes to defensive backs for this Detroit Lions defense.
Yeah, Dan, if the Washington Commanders at one time had an Alabama defensive line kink, I think we're seeing Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions have a little bit of an Alabama defensive back kink. So not here to kink shame anybody here. Seems to work out very well for them. So let that freak flag fly.
And as far as all the teams, we sit there and look at immediate impact. It could be the Vikings that have the least amount of that. As Carmen said, she expects Sam Darnold to start right away. Dallas Turner, an edge rusher you can spot play, and whether he becomes a full-time starter starter or not. You can put him in pass rushing situations where Caleb Williams is going to be out of the gate, the starter, or Dunze will be on the field all the time. Linemen, if they're starters, they're in for every play of the game. And then obviously Terrion Arnold, if you get a cornerback that's going to stick, he's going to be out there all the time as well. Carmen, I'm wondering, you mentioned your time in Chicago. I'm wondering your thoughts. And I've said this as a player, I always like playing in colder weather. So I was a little bummed Chicago's new stadium is going to be domed. What's your thoughts on that?
As someone who, I think the last Bears game I was at as a fan, it was a Monday night game against the Dallas Cowboys in 2013. It was 7 degrees below zero, senior. I do not want to sit there with hand warmers everywhere on my body. And I know that players don't want to play in that. I don't care how tough you are. I don't care if it's the Midwest. I don't care if it's the Chicago Bears. No one wants to play in that. And that affects the free agents you can recruit. That affects everybody's overall demeanor in a locker room. Good God. I'm happy that hopefully this ends up getting done. They have the dome, not to mention that opens Chicago up to the possibility of hosting a Super Bowl. And I would love nothing more. It's my favorite city in the world. I know I'm biased. I grew up there, yada, yada, yada. But opening that city up to the NFL community to host a Super Bowl, or to bring the draft even back there, where you can kind of have something in this giant stadium that's temperature controlled, because you never know what Chicago is like in April. I love it. I really do. I get the history of everything with Lambeau, but like, let the Packers stay up there and freeze, because I like the dome. I like the dome. It looks cool.
The only thing I'll say is, while it's great for the city because you can do year-round things there, home field advantage, if you could get the Bears in the playoffs. You look when Miami went to Kansas City. I go back to when I was in the league and my brother was. The Raiders went to Buffalo to play in a playoff game. You can tick off, example after example of warm teams going to cold places and having to play.
Yeah, don't we also have fans that were getting frostbite last year at the Chiefs game or whatever?
They really had to have amputated limbs.
Right.
Some of them had amputated limbs.
Like, we probably need to avoid that in some of these places that are a little bit more frigid, Carm.
Also, I was with the Buccaneers when they went to the Super Bowl, and guess who they beat in the NFC Championship at their place?
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers. They went up to Lambeau. It was like 20 degrees. It ended up, it was I think a 4 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. kickoff. Whatever it was, everybody was cold. The guys were cold. They're not used to that, but guess what? They beat the Packers anyway.
They did.
The Super Bowl.
Very true.
They did.
So,
They did
do that.
They did do them things. Okay. You know what? Instead of all this cold, Carmen, why don't you take a break, enjoy some time, maybe go over and visit the Rams draft house, since that looks to be the total opposite of what we're talking about here, this beautiful beachside palatial estate.
No, all I want to do is just lounge by the pool. Can I go do that? I don't want to do any work over there.
There you go. Well, you know what, Carmen? Do that. We know you've had a busy day one of the NFL draft, the weekend just getting started. We thank you so much for your time, as always, my friend. Enjoy the rest of a busy weekend in what has been the title division of the draft so far.
Have me, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, Carmen Vitali, you guys can check her at CarmyV on Twitter, covering the NFC North over at Fox Sports, doing a great job.
I love the last thing you mentioned. The LA Rams are the only team since 2021 that has not had a draft headquarters at their facility.
Oh, yeah.
They go somewhere else to do it, and they were in a 9,000 square foot mansion.
First time they picked in the first round since what, Vietnam at this point? I mean, they go up there and they get Jared Verse at edge rusher there, so good pick for them in the first round, certainly, as we look ahead at that. So awesome stuff there. Dad, coming off of looking at this and looking at that NFC North in particular, we'll take a look at some more draft grades with Matt Miller, who's going to join us from ESPN in about 5 minutes here as well. But the first round defined by a few things. We talked about the quarterback, certainly. Offensive players in general, 23 offensive players, an NFL draft record in the first round. Offensive line, certainly part of that flavor, but wide receiver also here.
Right.
Marvin Harrison Jr., the first off the board, no surprise to most everyone involved with the Arizona Cardinals, as you mentioned. But as we went along down here, Dad, Malik Neighbors to the New York Giants, giving Daniel Jones a downfield weapon there, and then Rome Odunze to the Bears that we talked about. So the big three going about what we expected for all those guys.
Yeah, overall, you mentioned 23 offensive players, 6 quarterbacks, 7 wide receivers, 9 offensive linemen. But we knew that wide receiver group was deep. And as the draft goes on, remember, the draft to me can be defined by that second round to 7th round. Sure. Jimmy Johnson was one of the best at finding gems in that 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. And that's where you really make your draft, because that first round is normally just one player. You want that to be an impactful player, but now you start to load up on the rest of your draft picks. And that, to me, as I go out and call games and look at rosters, it's always interesting to see how many from the rookie draft class not only made the team, but are contributing to that team. And these wide receivers, we have seen this position make a move in the last few years where they would come in as rookies and not be that, not contribute that much. And that's changed. These guys come in and are stars right out of the gate. And these first 3 guys, pick your poison on either one of these 3. I think they're all going to excel.
Yeah, Dan Orlovsky, I thought, brought this up the other day because when that graph came out of the hit rate of different positions in the first round over the last 20 years, from 2000 to 2019, wide receiver was a really low hit rate. Yeah. But to your point, I think the change reflected in the last 3 or 4 years where you're starting to see the net effect of a 7-on-7 driven high school football culture into spread offenses in college, and now an NFL that's meeting more of these guys halfway. Wide receivers transition has become what running back used to be, where these guys were much easier to plug and play on day one, which does make it interesting, Claudia. As we talk about wide receiver in the draft, it's hard to avoid what the Philadelphia Eagles did, making a headline with A.J. Brown on draft weekend. Once again, this time, another extension for this Eagles core of players this offseason.
Where are they finding all this money, by the way? 3-year, $96 million extension, 84 guaranteed, the most guaranteed money in NFL history for a wide receiver. Now, this comes just after Amon-Ra St. Brown got $77 million from the Lions. We were saying that was the most. That didn't last long. Brown just 26, Diener, you mentioned it. He seems a lot older than that.
He really does.
He's young, and now he's getting paid, coming off a career high, 106 receptions, almost 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns last season. And I guess it only gets better from here, right?
Well, listen, a lot of people were saying when Devonta Smith signed that AJ might be on the block. I never bought into that. And the reason I didn't is because what's one of the reasons you have to start bailing on players? It's when your quarterback, you have to pay him and he has a big hit. Jalen Hurts got that $255 million deal. But his cap hit this year isn't bad. Next year, it's still only $21 million. It doesn't get to be a bad amount for a couple of years. So they can live on this because these 2 receivers aren't the only 2 they have signed. A lot of the left tackle they signed as well.
Landon Dickerson, their guard, they signed to top money.
Also like mostly 3-year deals. I think one
Landon's was
4-year deal.
But everyone else, you're right.
But they're putting some money out there. But again, Jalen Hurts is not hurting them too much in that cap space, so they have room to do this.
Dallas Cowboys fans have to be just punching air furiously, looking over at Howie Roseman and the notion that, wait a minute, you can carefully plan financially by getting ahead of these contracts and identifying players that you like and are talented and have performed and getting them under contract before the rest of the leaves fall, as Jerry Jones. Like, what the hell's he talking about?
I always go back. Andrew Brandt, who I think does a fantastic job of the business side of the NFL, used to be with the Green Bay Packers in that management group. He had always said he hates to hear when people talk about teams, they have trouble with their cap, they're in cap hell or whatever. He said, no. He said, that shouldn't happen. You have a capologist, you have people that should be able to project over the years so you don't get yourself into cap trouble, into dead cap money trouble. And look what the Eagles are doing right now. And Jerry Jones' comment is, why haven't you signed, guys like CeeDee Lamb and redone Dak Prescott? I'm waiting for more leaves to fall.
Yeah, I want to see more of these big money deals come out so the price continues to increase. And eventually, then I can look at my fan base and go, well, these guys cost too much money. We can't possibly keep all of them. And so now I get the excuse to do what I wanted to do all along.
I'm amazed at that. For a team that's won at least 12 games the last 3 years.
I love the quotes from the Cowboys, because you're right. They've won 12 games each of the last 3 years. They make the playoffs, but they lose there every year. And Stephen Jones goes, well, we won the offseason last year, and look what it got us. So that's a reason to not do anything ever again in the offseasons here now. Do like the Tyler Guyton pick, not an offensive lineman. I think most teams could have gotten away with taking there, but because of their history of developing incredibly talented players, actually a pretty decent pick, and they got to move back and pick up some capital and do it. But still incredibly frustrating to watch your chief division rival go out and continue to just make the deals that the Cowboys absolutely refuse to do. We'll take a look back at night 1 and look forward at the rest of the weekend with ESPN's draft analyst Matt Miller next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. Night one of the NFL Draft in the books right now. We've got plenty to react to still, and a full weekend full of other picks that, to Dad's point, are going to round out and in many ways define the rosters around the NFL. So for more on that, we're pumped to welcome in ESPN NFL Draft analyst and insider Matt Miller. Matt's going to be a part of the Saturday broadcast for rounds 4 through 7 on ESPN and ABC starting at noon Eastern. So obviously got a full and busy weekend coming up still, Matt. But thanks for joining us today. And a chalky first round in some ways, a busy first round in others. What was the biggest headline for you coming out of round 1 of the draft?
Guys, it has to be the Atlanta Falcons drafting Michael Penix Jr. at number 8 overall. And not only is that the biggest headline, but I think it's the biggest, like, oh my God, what are they doing moment. And, rarely do we get those in the first round anymore because there are so many of us who cover the NFL draft. It's become such a huge industry. I mean, it's 250,000 people are in downtown Detroit last night watching the draft. It's a huge thing, right? So because of that, there's a lot more information that's known. We just don't get the surprise picks anymore. That floored me. And I want to give credit. My coworker, Jeremy Fowler, we were on the phone together like a week ago, and he was like, hey, I'm hearing the Falcons like Penix. What do you think about that? I was like, smoke screen. There's no way. So Fowler, you were right. My bad. I steered you wrong on that one, buddy. But that is by far, like you said, very chalky in the top 7. And then I felt like all hell broke loose after that.
Yeah, again, Terry Fontenot, the GM for Atlanta, is kind of living the Green Bay way here of Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. But both those times the quarterbacks were picked in the 20s, not number 8 overall. Yeah. So there was that one, and then Denver taking Bo Nix. How much was that a reach, or they really believe that guy should be the 12th pick in the draft?
I think it was a reach on value. And, we get into this, I had him ranked at 39 overall. That is probably not factoring in positional value as much as, NFL teams will do it. But I also think, and here's the interesting thing about the draft, where if we had more than 10 minutes per pick, we would be able to dive into this more, right? It's like, yes, he was a reach on value, but we had just seen 5 quarterbacks go in the first 10 picks. And so they were really at a point of, they backed themselves into a corner this year because they have Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci as their quarterback room. Free agency is gone. The trade market is gone. So they were backed into such a corner that, yeah, it's a reach, but what else were you going to do? You really couldn't sit and wait because I think the Raiders probably would have taken Bo Nix at 13 because they were in a similar situation of they let everyone know they liked Michael Penix and he was never going to make it to them at 13 because of that. So I think that's for Denver. We could look at the big boards and say, oh my God, that was a reach. But history has to remind us, like when we reevaluate this draft, that, hey, there were no quarterbacks on the board and someone was going to take him right after them. So even the trade back option, would have loved to have traded back. But as soon as those guys all went off the board in the top 10, you knew that there was no trade back opportunity anymore.
You mentioned the team left holding the bag, the Las Vegas Raiders, right after that. Take Brock Bowers and had Michael Mayer selected early in the draft last year. Yep. The quarterback room there, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew now. What did you make of that where Brock Bowers finally came off the board?
The Raiders need to send the Falcons like a fruit basket because they got them off the hook. Because I swear all we would be talking about today is you drafted the number 1 tight end. Michael Mayer was my number 1 tight end last year, not just appealing to the Notre Dame crowd here. I loved him. And he's a great player. And now you turn around and draft another really good tight end. Now, they are different types of players. Mayer's going to be more inline. Brock Bowers is basically a slot receiver. And I think that's how you almost have to frame this. But it was shocking. They need help on defense. They need another defensive end opposite Max Crosby. They need corners badly. Every corner in the draft. Hell, every defensive player in the draft was sitting there waiting for you to take them. So I think that's where with the Raiders, you could say, hey, best player available. And believe that because he was the best player available at that spot. But you're ignoring all your needs on defense. And I know, Green Bay and Buffalo have made the 2 tight end set in vogue again. A lot of teams are going that way. But when you don't have a quarterback to get them the ball, it feels more like a luxury pick than smart team building.
I agree. I never bought into the best player available no matter what. I'd be like, yes, matter what. If I'm set at that position, I'm going to look somewhere else. So Now we look second round to seventh round. Now teams try and, if a guy has a second round grade, they try and get him at the end of the second round or the third round. They try and grab the value out of it. So who are some of the guys that we're going to see in the next couple of days where you say, okay, this team can hit a home run with them?
Yeah, it's so important. We over-evaluate the first round and probably under-evaluate rounds 2 through 7. That's just the nature of the business. But I look at, there's still some really good wide receivers on the board, even though 7 went last night. Adonai Mitchell from Texas is still out there. Keon Coleman from Florida State. Ladd McConkey from Georgia. Like, these are wide receivers who are going to be big-time impact players. The Buffalo Bills could get one, like, at 33. I think you have to, given their offseason. So we'll see those guys fly off the board. We didn't see a linebacker selected. There's a lot of good ones out there. We didn't see any safety selected. And we only saw one defensive tackle, Byron Murphy from Texas. There's still really good defensive tackle play. All the running backs are available. I would think Jonathan Brooks from Texas is going to go pretty early tonight. Did you guys see the Cowboys? Like, I think it was this morning or last night. They're just raving about Jonathan Brooks. It's like, yo, he's still on the board. Like, you might not want to let everyone know how much you love Jonathan Brooks, because they can still draft him. There's not a dibs, situation in the NFL draft. So, but yeah, there's so many good players. I think this year, there's a sharp drop off because of it's a shallow pool because of that 2020 COVID year eligibility. I couldn't find 500 draftable players this year. It's just there wasn't that much talent. Next year, there's going to be like 1,000. Literally, there's going to be so many next year. So if you're a team like Chicago where you don't have late round picks this year, you're okay. Like, you're in a pretty good spot. This was not the year to load up on 6th and 7th round picks because you think you're going to find, steals at that point. This year, round 6 and 7 are more priority free agent type guys.
You mentioned a shallow pool, a lot of quality beef available early in this draft. We saw a massive run on offensive players in general, but certainly offensive linemen as well. 9 go in the first round, Matt. Who had your favorite fit of offensive linemen married with new team?
Man, I think it's Joe Alt. And I love that the Chargers didn't overthink this, that they just said, hey, like, we've seen the J.C. Latham buzz. We've seen the wide receiver buzz. The J.J. McCarthy odds got crazy there for a minute. But they took the best offensive lineman in the draft. And I had a conversation with a Chargers official at one of the pro days I was at about Joe Alt. I was like, I love Joe Alt for you guys, but what do you do with them? And they said, Rashawn Slater can play right tackle. And that floored me. I'm like, wait, no, Rashawn Slater's a really good left tackle, but they do believe that both these guys have the flexibility to play on either side. Slater's entering a contract year. He kind of took a step back last season. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, is this a move to balance the offensive line, or is this a move to kind of refresh what they're doing at left tackle? But I think Alt is a fantastic player. I didn't dislike any of the O-line fits, though. I thought the Jets did a good job getting a Fashanu, and again, like, not overthinking it. I saw so many mock drafts of teams overthinking it. If I could say one, I don't love J.C. Latham, and especially for Tennessee, I don't think he's a left tackle at all. I never saw that from his tape. He's heavy. He had 18 penalties. Now, Bill Callahan is a better offensive line evaluator than I will ever be, and so I tend to trust that because I really trust Bill Callahan. But that was the biggest head scratcher for me up front, at least.
Yeah, I think that's one Tennessee had been bracing with all of the J.C. Latham to Chargers news to have Joe Alt fall down to them. And so certainly a little bit of shock this morning. But like you said, Bill Callahan gets the benefit of the doubt from a lot of us, even if that one might not seem like the most seamless fit right off the bat. Matt, we know you got a busy weekend coming up here, man. Best of luck. We're looking forward to watching you, especially as the later rounds get going here in the draft and the real value shines through. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. He does the professional thing, too, because we've all done shows from the hotel room. He makes the bed behind him.
Yeah, I know. It's always hit or miss.
Always
I
key.
usually just try and get it out of the shot because making a hotel bed is just a bridge too far for me. I can't do that.
But sometimes that's the only shot you can have. The bed's going to be in it, so you gotta make it look pretty good.
It's just hard because they really tuck the sheets.
They really
so
do.
tight.
That's the first thing I do is I kick the sheets out. Yeah,
you got to. Claudia,
You can break a toe doing that.
You can.
Yeah,
it's tough.
dangerous.
Do you kick sheets out or you leave them tucked in?
I do. No, I kick them out.
Kick them out? Yeah.
I don't know how
You're
people sleep all
suffocated.
burritoed.
I know,
like
can't
that.
do it.
It's like babies. They have to sleep in all those sleep sacks now. It's terrifying.
Need freedom to move.
Freedom to move. Coming up next, we will finally free the takes. Our time capsule from before the draft,
Wine box,
containing all of the mysteries of the universe, will be unsealed and revealed next here on GoJo and Golic.
Wine box.
I hate you.
All right.
The NFL draft is a few weeks away, but instead of just giving takes on what we think is going to happen, we're going to take this real serious, okay? This is a time capsule.
Yeah.
The time capsule, Claudia, looks like you got a bottle of wine from somebody in that box. You just slid the top off, took the wine out, and put our picks in that wine box.
It might be a wine box, but it's our time capsule.
That's a wine box. That's a wine box.
Why can't you suspend disbelief right now? You're trying to degrade it? You're trying to take it down a notch? What the hell's wrong with you?
You bury that wood in a time capsule and leave it there for any amount of time, it's going to disintegrate, and everything in it's going to disintegrate.
Yeah, you thought we were going to really bury our time capsule.
That's what you do with a time capsule.
Is that what you did with any of the time capsules that we made when I was in elementary school?
Yes,
No, you
yes, they're in the backyard. They're buried in the backyard.
You're lying
with
to
a
a nation of people.
hamster and some of the other pets we had.
The hamster's in the lake. You threw that into the water.
Well, yeah, it's true. That was growing up at my house in Cleveland. We had a hamster that we buried in the backyard. Chips was his name.
Rest in peace, Chips.
Yeah.
And rest in peace, Zippity, who was unceremoniously thrown into the water after my brother might have accidentally murdered him. It was a whole thing. It wasn't a great period for us. Wow.
So we didn't discuss any of the takes in that clip. We just talked about hamsters dying.
Yeah.
But we do have all of those takes right here. And I'll give you that again. Oh. I'm going to go one by one, guys.
All right.
See how many you got right. Okay? Cash it or trash it. Presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear everything DraftKings has to offer. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. We have to get that through.
Yeah,
okay.
we do.
Yes, we do.
Now we can go one by one.
Okay.
I was waiting for the graphic. There was no graphic.
Yeah,
It's
you
fine.
know.
We got it. Wide receivers. Okay. GoJo. Marvin Harrison Jr. Adunze. Neighbors. Mitchell. Thomas.
All right, so I got those pretty damn wrong.
You were pretty wrong.
I mean, you were.
I was close.
Senior had Caleb, Daniels, Maye, McCarthy, Penix. So just flipped.
Oh, no. We're at wide receivers.
Sorry.
Wide receivers.
Wide receivers. So you had Marvin Harrison Jr., Neighbors, Adunze, Brian
I got the
Thomas.
first four right.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Eddie Mitchell, you got the wrong Texas wide receiver.
I did. It was Xavier Worthy who was the fifth one. I was close on that one.
You were pretty close on that one.
I'll take partial credit. For sure.
Listen, I know this wasn't part of our box thing here, but I did get the order of 4 linemen that I ranked right going into this draft instead of wide receivers. So
we didn't do linemen.
Well,
No, it doesn't.
I'm just giving myself
That's
partial
not
credit.
in the wine box /time capsule.
Went back and found a tweet March 3rd. I said it'd be all Olu Fashanu, Talisi Fuanga, and Troy Fautanu.
We didn't do offensive linemen,
Yeah,
so
I know.
your comments are void.
I just wanted to distract you from how wrong
Claudia,
I was there. I was
please
very right
move
about
on and
offensive line.
let's turn his mic
know
off.
offensive line
Claudia,
well.
I was closest
Very
on that
smart.
one. What's
Yes.
next?
We're going to go quarterbacks because that's the one I just read off. GoJo, you had Williams, Maye, Daniels, McCarthy, Rattler.
Rattler,
yeah, a little reach on that one.
What did I have?
You had Caleb, Daniels, Maye, McCarthy, Penix. So
Just missed
You were
those.
close, yeah.
Those,
You missed-
again, the closest one. My partial credit score is off the charts right now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could read mock drafts off the internet too.
Oh, see, here you go.
You know,
when you don't get it right,
you copy
know
the
what
work
you do.
from the internet.
You start
I
to get a little
took this
sour.
risk. Took the risk.
It's not about taking risks. It's
stood
about
on,
getting it right.
Stood on business.
People
No, I'm
always
a
say,
man of
when I pick Kansas City to win the Super Bowl, they're like, "Oh, way to go out on a limb." I'm like, I'm asked to pick a Super Bowl
I
champ,
picked
not
Kansas City to win
go
the
out
Super
on a
Bowl.
limb.
I picked Kansas City.
So I was the closest.
I had the right Super
Yet
Bowl
again,
matchup,
would
too.
you say, Claudia, right now, wide receivers, running quarterbacks, I am dominating.
yes. And
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You had a lot of takes yesterday in general that hit, so.
Wow.
GoJo, I'm sorry.
Wow.
Hey, listen, that's fine. I comped Troy Fautanu to Marquise Pouncey, and then the Steelers drafted him now.
Again, with the line.
Again.
Jeez.
Well, here's what you
Ball
both got wrong. So there's that. We can even it out. First defensive player off the board. You both said Bama Edge, Dallas Turner.
We did.
But 2 days ago when we talked about this, I said I would take Leatu Latu first of those edge rushers, and lo and behold, the Colts did that. I'm never afraid to learn and admit when I was wrong.
What's in the time capsule? Dallas Turner, right?
Dallas Turner.
So you're wrong.
I was wrong then, but
We
2
locked
days
it
ago,
in.
I was right.
You're wrong. In the time capsule, you are a horrific 0 for 3.
That was from a long time ago. I have displayed growth here. You want to live in the past right now.
Claudia, you're the arbiter here. He was wrong, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Also, the reason I was so confused is because I wrote separate. This is why the cards are tough. Like I did your quarterbacks on one card and then your receivers on one card.
I bet you'd rather.
So if you see me hiding cards, I'm not cheating.
I bet you'd rather there really be a bottle of wine in that box right now.
Honestly, it's Friday, right?
Yeah,
I'm a little tired.
Years, man.
Yes.
We should be drunk.
Okay, first team to trade up or down. You both said Vikings. And they ended up doing it twice. So they were first 11-10 and then went 23-17.
There you go. All right.
Boom.
You got to finally feel good. You finally lucked out into one. You know what I bet too?
I said that before you.
I was going to say, I think I said it first.
No, there's
Pull
no
the
chance.
tape. I think I said it first and you copied me.
No, it's ridiculous.
Whatever.
You're embarrassing yourself.
All right. Whatever. What's next?
See, I have two. I don't know why I did it this way. Would there be a running back drafted in the first round? You
I
both
said no.
said no way.
Yeah.
We both said. Why you got to say
I said it first.
Okay, we both did.
said this.
Why can't we both get credit for it?
I
Right
feel like
now,
you copied
I
off
mean,
test
my
a lot.
hit percentage is unbelievable.
And yeah, see, okay, that's it. I'm like, there seemed to be a lot more cards, but we got through it all. First defensive player, running back drafted, first team, receivers and quarterbacks. So we hit them all. And senior one.
Thank you very much. That's what I was going to ask.
So we did
This was a very complex way to do this. I feel like it could have been more structured, so we could have done some tallies
It was
and
kind
such.
of off the cuff.
Listen,
It was.
Could
but
we have
senior
planned this out better? Yes. Would that
100%.
have been in the spirit of the show? Absolutely not.
But just so it's official, let's let Claudia have the mic to herself. Who was the winner?
Yeah, senior, yeah.
Again.
Yeah, senior, yeah, that's not it.
Senior wins that one.
Thank you.
You see, she doesn't even want to give you credit because you're the
Because I
worst
can't
winner
keep
on the
track in
planet.
my head. That was so confusing.
Why is your age group sticking together here? I won.
No,
give
Dad,
the old man some credit.
The reason no one wants you to win is because you're a sore winner. You've been a sore winner since
am I a
mini golf
sore
when I was
winner?
12 years old.
Listen,
ask everyone in my family, and nobody wanted to ever see you win there because when you do it, you peacock all over the place.
One person threw the putter into the river. Was it me or
that's
you?
not being a sore winner. That's taking competition seriously.
That's being a sore loser.
Yes,
which
exactly.
You were horrible
Would
at.
always rather be a sore loser.
I tried to build you guys to have some mental toughness, and you folded like a cheap tent.
No, you were look at me, Louie.
No.
Look at me, Louie, dancing in front of
you know what?
everybody here.
You know what I wanted to be as a role model? I wanted you guys to say, I want to be a winner like Dad. That's all I wanted. I want what's best for my children.
No, that's great. I'm just here to tell you.
Yeah.
You failed miserably.
Okay.
So good job, good effort.
But he won the wine box
Thank you.
Again,
Thank you.
We did the piece from Emerson. There are no winners or losers in the draft. We don't keep score out here.
we
it's just a
kept score.
vibes-based economy.
Oh, we kept score, and I won.
I tell you what, man, I feel good about the way I evaluated this offensive line class, man. Top to bottom. I mean, really great group when you look at this one. We talked about it already. Our boy Joe Wall, J.C. Latham, that'll be interesting with them, but Olu Fashanu out of Penn State going to the New York Jets. I loved them taking all line there instead of going tight end down. Would have been a reach with Brock Bowers a little bit there. You keep going down, Talisi Fuanga out of Oregon State, going to Saints. Big need an offensive line. They had to make this happen here. Amarius Mims, how about this tackle group for the Cincinnati Bengals? You already had Orlando Brown, then you bring in Trent Brown, and now you take Amarius Mims, a 340-pound Adonis out of Georgia. That might be the heaviest offensive tackle group in history, right? Top to bottom, you agree, right? Totally. Troy Fautanu going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, position versatility, let him play center. I think he'd be really good at center. You agree with that, right? I totally think so, too. You keep going out, Jordan Morgan, going to the Green Bay Packers. Position versatility. Graham Barton sneaking all the way down to the Tampa Bay.
Line in here?
I promise. I looked.
3 words.
Tyler Guyton?
I don't care.
They develop really well there in Dallas. Well-earned reputation.
I'm just going to say it now. I don't give a damn about the offensive line, okay?
Oh, man.
Bunch of holders out there, bunch of cheaters, okay? Congrats to all that are getting drafted. Do your thing. But I never liked O-linemen, never have, never will. You played on the wrong side of the ball.
You know
Your brother played on the wrong side of the ball as a tight end, but at least it's a skill position, so I give him credit for that. I hate O-linemen. There, I said it.
You know who likes O-linemen a lot more than they like D-linemen? The first round of this NFL draft. How about that? You putz. You putz.
I got to be a putz now?
Putz.
You're right about that comment, but I don't know I have to be a putz.
They should change the name of this shop from Mighty Sharp to the 3 Putzes.
I won.
All right, guys, time to finish off the show and the week the way we always do. The stat and the third. 3 quick stories. Send you off into the weekend, the rest of the NFL draft, more NBA playoffs. As always, you can make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. You can catch the best of GoJo and Golic and all our first-round NFL draft reaction wherever you hear VSiN on the radio from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you missed that or any of our wonderful guests live, shout out to our bud Carmen Vitali, NFC North reporter over at Fox Sports, and ESPN draft analyst Matt Miller for stopping by and helping break this down. If you missed that, you can catch them wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done.
I look forward to the next couple of days. I have an affinity toward later drafted guys, me being a 10th rounder, you being an undrafted guy, to see where you hit those. That to me really tells a lot about an organization and how they judge a player and rate a player when you can get that 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounder and have them contribute.
Well, these were also the draft broadcasts where you really shined, where you'd be throwing donuts into crowds of onlookers.
Yes. This is back when I was a little more big-boned, and I usually feasted on cookies and donuts. And the 2nd and 3rd day, the crowd gets raucous. And I would try and keep the hounds at bay by throwing them donuts and cookies and became a fan favorite, which you throw food at me, I'm going to love you.
Hey, win the crowd, win your freedom, win draft fame forever.
Are you not entertained?
Is this not why you are here? To have sugary treats thrown all over you. Let's get to that in part in this, that, and the third, the great scene that we saw last night. But let's start off with this one right here. Of shocking picks in the first round, we didn't talk about the San Francisco 49ers at the end of the first round, taking Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. And amidst a sea of headlines surrounding their top wide receivers going into draft night, where there were reports coming out that apparently the 49ers have been looking to trade up in this draft, and one of the things that they were angling was the potential of either of their star receivers in Brandon Ayuk, who is seeking a contract extension right now, or Deebo Samuel, which made this moment after the draft pretty interesting, where they draft Ricky Pearsall, former teammate at Arizona State, of Brandon Ayuk, which is wild to think about how long these guys have been in college. But according to ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, wide receiver Brandon Ayuk actually texted GM John Lynch and head coach Kyle Shanahan after that selection and said, "Fire pick. Can't lie." So maybe not ruffling many feathers just because it was a guy he knew.
So cool tweet, and again, they were teammates, but I would like to know the reaction of Lynch and Shanahan when the text popped up. And you didn't see the message, you just thought it was from Brandon Ayuk. You had to be going, okay, what's he going to say? He's talking about a trade. We just drafted a wide receiver. I bet they were a little hesitant hitting that one. And then we're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
That's a good way to like Miyagi the pick in there. It's like, oh no, this is your friend. We're bringing in a guy you like here, even though it does seem like, Dad, in the game of wide receiver musical chairs there, this is probably something to read into. We saw the other day, Andrew Whitworth did a podcast talking about when he was with the Bengals in a contract year, they draft a guy in the first round and the second round at his position. Kind of sends a message that there's at least the thought that you might not be here for the long haul.
Much like we talk about in Cincinnati, you had to pay Burrow, to pay Chase, to pay T. Higgins. We saw they obviously franchise tagged him. That's 3 guys. We always talk about the plethora of talent. Now, McCaffrey had a deal, but Purdy's going to come up. Obviously, you have Kittle there as well. You have Deebo. You have Ayuk. So there is a thought process that you can't pay them all for the services that they've rendered. They deserve big deals, but it would be tough to do, though the Eagles are showing that you can do it.
Yeah, I can say Brandon Ayuk's like, what are you talking about? You can pay everybody here. Howie Roseman does it every offseason. So we'll wait and see.
All the other GMs are ticked at Howie Roseman.
I was just going to say that. They're like, why you got to do that, dude?
Exactly. Make us look bad.
And he can't keep getting away with this. And yet he does. Claudia, let's get to that. We talked a lot about Reggie Bush getting his Heisman back the other day. We finally heard from the man and apparently his continued pursuit of justice.
Yeah, so separate, right? The Heisman Trust gave him the Heisman back, and we talked about that was separate from the NCAA, who he is still suing for defamation.
I'm just so thankful I can stand here in front of you guys today, proud, because I did it the right way. I never once cheated this game, ever. Yesterday felt like game day for me when I went to get that trophy, I promise you. I was hyped up. I was ready to run down the football field. I was waiting for a punt or something to come down. I was excited, man, and you know, my wife would tell you I got the chills all over again.
And it must be exhausting, too, being one of the best college players of all time, having to go through all this to clear your name.
Didn't hear a word he said. I was looking at the dude with the cowboy.
Okay, yeah.
Who the hell's that guy?
We need to talk about this dude here. I pray. So he's still suing the NCAA for defamation after everything that had gone down with his character and the way he'd been talked about.
And he didn't cheat on the field. That is true.
Yeah.
He broke the rules, the NCAA rules. He did do that, but he certainly didn't cheat on the field. And NCAA, it's ridiculous for some of the things they do.
I can only pray. And if you didn't see the video of that, please go to watch that.
Who is he?
The hoss wearing the cowboy hat.
Who is he?
If that man is on his legal team, Reggie is winning every ounce of this lawsuit. That looks like a man.
Need to know who he is. All that's missing is a stogie. Him having a big old cigar in his mouth.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's got spurs on his cowboy boots below the frame there where we can see.
We don't see his hands. We don't see his hands. He's holding a bottle of whiskey.
Bottle of whiskey, or there's like the trigger right in the hip there pocket. He's got the gun holster right there. He looks like a full-blown cowboy.
Yeah, he does.
Both, yeah.
Oh, my
Straight
God.
out of Yellowstone.
Wow. I need to know everything about who that man is because he just took over. I mean, he's standing next to the actual Heisman Trophy winner from 2005, Reggie Bush, and don't you all forget it. And the Heisman Trophy itself, and somehow became the star of that frame.
I'll listen to that online at some point because I don't know what Reggie said. I was just too mesmerized by that dude.
We're all still thrilled that Reggie.
It's great if you can look good in a cowboy hat. How great that would be.
To be able to wear a cowboy hat unironically and have it, everyone just go, oh yeah, this
I'm
makes sense.
telling you, one of the best looking guys in a cowboy hat is a guy, whenever I see him, whenever I saw him over the years, I thought, this dude could still play, by the way. Mel Blount. The former safety of the Steelers. That dude was, I mean, he could have played for decades the way he looked, and man, did he look the part in a cowboy hat as well.
So Mel Blount still lives around the area in Pittsburgh, and when I went out there as a rookie, you went to rookie camp, you're out there for the offseason program, Mel Blount invites, I don't know if he still does this or not, but back in 2013, invited all the rookies over to his ranch, and he's got like a ropes course there,
it's
and
incredible.
horses and all this stuff, and he walks up, and it's this 6'4" dude with the cowboy hat and boots on, just looking at you. Like you said, that guy coming downhill the way the wood is terrifying.
Somebody, I mean, wow, he was terrifying, obviously, when he played.
Yeah, no, can't imagine.
Man, that dude pulls off a cowboy hat, too.
Don't get mad at me for saying this, but the facial hair, I just feel like maybe you could rock a cowboy hat. The two together work.
Who,
and for
Mike?
some reason, yeah.
I mean, it would cover up. I need a hat.
You need
too.
some kind of hat.
That's Levi G. McCarthy II, partner. So it is part of his legal team.
Okay, all right.
Win this, baby.
All right.
Enjoy whatever you get in return for this defamation suit.
I got to know, does he have a commercial?
Oh, God.
Oh, does he have a commercial out there?
Oh, my God. We need this. At GoJo Golic on Twitter. If you can find a commercial for McCarthy, Shokoe, and Evans, the law firm there. 25 years going strong at that partnership. We'll find the answer to that.
Wow.
Claudia, let's get to the third. If we're going to celebrate this hoss, we need to also take time to celebrate the city of Detroit that showed up and showed out for night one of the NFL draft.
Yes, the Big D showed up. And I hate how they call it that.
I don't think they call it that. Isn't that what they call
Yes,
Dallas?
they do.
Dude, that was a whole thing. Roger Goodell and Eminem had, though. That was the thing there,
it was
supposedly.
cringeworthy, but it's fine.
It was.
A lot of people showed up. All-time day one record for day one of the draft. More than 275,000 fans in attendance. Dan Campbell, fortune teller, was there. The outfits that people have, just where do you think of this?
They had a Zoltar Dan Campbell.
Yes.
That was one of the coolest things I saw, Zoltar Dan Campbell. And this is, without question, one of the great moves the NFL has done. Because it had been in New York forever. But now, I mean, taking this on the road, moving it around, has been nothing but a smash hit wherever it's gone.
It was awesome. We were in 2019 in Nashville when the previous record had been set for this. And seeing that sea of humanity, to watch roster transactions. There was no action. There's not real games here. And yet the fan bases in the NFL,
Incredible.
and certainly here, the city of Detroit, that's enjoyed a renaissance for its team under Dan Campbell, and now has had this reward of the NFL draft there, absolutely left their mark on night one. And that weekend is just getting started here. We're just finishing up. If you enjoyed it, download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the NFL draft. We'll talk to you Monday.
Break open the box of wine.